So you love podcasts, and you want to listen to more amazing content, but you have no idea what to listen to. And your friends keep telling you about great episodes, yet you can never remember what they told you. Well, here's the answer. Good Pods. It's the social app dedicated to podcasts where your friends, podcast listeners, and favorite podcast hosts all come together to share on their feeds what they recommend and what they listen to. You can connect to others, bookmark episodes, start a conversation about the episode, connect to the hosts, and most importantly, listen to great podcasts right in the Good Pods app. Download Good Pods wherever you get your apps and start sharing with a community that loves to listen. Good Pods. It's where to connect and listen.
Hey, no joke. We want you and those around you to thrive loud. So stay inside and stay safe.
Get ready to thrive loud with Lou Diamond.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond, connecting you to the most inspiring and amazing people that are thriving each and every day. I'm your host, Lou Diamond. Today on Thrive Loud, we do not have a guru here or someone who has anything to sell. He's a business owner that recently went through a major downturn when the market he was in crashed in 2018. And with that bad news, he has now managed to turn around his business into something that is much, much better and much more profitable. He's documented it in his turnaround plan, which is also a podcast program he hosts, as he's now sharing with others that are having struggling businesses that need help, how they could turn things around, which is something during COVID-19 many people need right now. Thrive Loud listeners, Byron Walker. Byron, how are you today?
Hey, I'm doing great. Glad to be on the show.
So let's do a quick rewind here. We're going to go back to the business that you had, the role that you were in, to bring people up to speed as to exactly what was going on in your world. And we'll kick things off with that and then move forward. Sound like a plan?
Yeah. So some background. Well, I have an e-commerce business. It's called Survival Frog, and started about 11 years ago. And
what is Survival Frog? What does it do?
Yeah, so we sell survival gear.
Okay.
That could be anything from long-term food storage to knives to solar products, camping gear. So all kinds of really fun, cool gadgets. And so the business was actually doing really well, 20, 30% growth year over year, been around for a while. And then about 3 years ago or 2.5 years ago, we just hit a brick wall.
And you had mentioned that a survival market actually had crashed at that time. Was that true? Something specific in that sector?
Yeah. So it turns out the survival markets is cyclical, but it's based off of usually a political cycle, meaning whenever there's a Democrat in the office, the survival market booms. And whenever there's a Republican in the White House, then the market drops.
Interesting.
And so, yeah, it's somewhat like guns. So I mean, kind of.
I guess that would be the opposite, right? Okay.
Yeah. So the market, Trump got elected, and we actually didn't feel it for like the first year or so, but then it hit us really hard. And over the next year, the entire market, but us included, dropped about 70%. So we went from about 9 million in revenue down to 3 million.
Yeah, big hit.
And huge dip and very painful, road down to 3 million for sure.
Certainly difficult for the frog to survive. So
yeah. But that transition was, again, it went from a good, strong business down to we're losing money. We're losing a lot of money, month over month. And so, in that process, I created and just kind of, it was survival mode, literally, and put together a turnaround plan of, how are we going to get out of this mess? And it took a year to execute it, but we completed the pivot and came out the other side looking great. But, it was not easy to get through. In fact, we went from 27 employees down to 5.
So let me get down to what were some of the pivots that you made to specifically related to Survival Frog?
Yeah. Well, so I just hit one right there. Labor was our biggest cost.
Okay.
And so we reduced the staff, and I'd love to tell you it was just one fell swoop. No, I decided to torture myself through several different rounds of layoffs. But unfortunately, the employee count had to go down, and that was very painful on many different levels. I've had some of these employees for 9 years, and it's heart-wrenching. But that was one of them. General expenses, we cut a lot of overhead. We went virtual as a company. We outsourced our fulfillment center, which was in-house. And so costs were definitely, hit and went down considerably. But some of the other bigger moving parts were margins. We increased our gross margin on our physical products by about 50%.
Oh, wow.
Which is huge.
Did you change your inventory? I had a recent conversation with someone else, and they re-examined their entire product line to see what made the most sense. Was that some of the choices that you made?
That's exactly what we did. In fact, we went from about 550 SKUs down to 170.
Wow.
And so you can imagine which 170 we kept. It was the highest margin, the most popular, everything. And so that increased the margins, which is really, powerful in the turnaround, but it also simplified my business.
Yeah.
And so fewer moving parts. It was easier to order. I didn't have to have a full-time person doing all the supply chain, ordering. And another thing that did for us is we had, this warehouse full of goods, the 550 SKUs or so. And so when we cut down to 170, well, the other, whatever it is, 300 and some odd SKUs, we didn't have to replenish. So what that meant was when we sold them, and we did sell them at a discount just to get the cash in the door quickly, but that cash came in and we didn't have to spend it again to replenish our stock on those products. So that really helped us during those months of losing 50 grand, 100 grand. It was bleeding, but that helped. Even though the P&L looked awful, our cash flow position was okay, and we're able to kind of ride that out. So that was a big move, for us to reduce the SKU count like that.
So I like this, and I see the table that we're setting here ahead of needing to make changes because of the industry. You truly took the definition of less is more with your inventory, your people, making things more profitable, focusing on the products you need to. And I'm going to harp into what is the obvious segue here for our listeners here. You went virtual. What did that mean for you back in 2018, 2019, if you would? What did that mean for you leading into 2020?
Well, it really set us up for, if you will, the new way of doing business, I guess, because obviously everyone's virtual now, and we were ahead of that curve. And so it was nice to get used to the virtual meetings, and we used to go into the office where our old office was, and we'd go in. It's basically just one room, and we'd go in there once a week and have face-to-face meetings. Those don't happen anymore. But besides that, nothing else has really changed. We moved into virtual, and so everything that our operating systems and everything already were working before we were, COVID-19 hit. So it definitely helped us in that transition. There was no transition for us, really.
So you spun into profitability. The world needed more of these survival type things. Well, I guess we could talk about that towards the end of the interview. But I also want to recognize something important, and that was that you made really sharp decisions to figure out what was going to work best for the business, and must have learned a ton of lessons while doing that. I guess what I want to know is that what spurned that what you did for you is something you wanted to help others do as well? Is this something that's always been inside of you, this kind of philanthropic way of helping others, giving back?
Well, yes, it's always been in me. In fact, we're doing a lot of donations of N95 masks. We're trying to give back in many different directions. But what wasn't in me was kind of being, I don't know, like you mentioned, like the guru. And I definitely don't consider myself as a guru, but I've never done a podcast. I've never been out there teaching these ideas. So that is new for me. But what I went through was so impactful that I know I had to document it, which I did along the way. And I want to give that back out. Before COVID-19 hit, I already had that plan. A book was halfway done, and I want to share this experience with, other business owners who eventually may go through a downturn. And then boom, COVID-19 hit. And so now I've got a pretty captive audience, I think, or at least a lot of people who do need this. So the timing was kind of ironic, and it just helped me push this out a little bit faster than I probably would have, which has been a good little push along the way.
I want to ask this question. It's a little front leading, and I'm just more concerned, obviously, with the items that you sell at Survival Frog and some of the things you've been giving away. Has this window of time in COVID-19 in these last 2 months been good for the business?
Yeah, very. Okay. So our business 5X.
Wow.
So 500%. And really all that happened over about a 3 to 4 week period of time. So let's put it this way. There were a few growing pains. There were a few bumps in the road, but my team did a fantastic job. And we came into it, again, not just virtual, but we came into it being profitable. Yep. Okay. Because the turnaround was completed a year ago in May. Okay. So May of
2019.
Yeah. And so we've been profitable since then. And so not just profitable, but virtual, super efficient in all the systems we have. Our SOPs are tight. Our data points are tight. Everything was well-ran machine. And then we came into COVID-19. And so we were very prepared. In fact, most of our competitors were not prepared. They didn't have the management team in place. They were, they just, with me, gone through 3 years of kind of bumpy road. And so we came into it just primed for it. And we've been able to really capitalize on it and help just thousands of people. The reaction we're getting from our customers is just overwhelming. It's so nice to see that, my business is able to give back, in this time of need. So it's been quite the ride, that's for sure.
So let's dive into this, because what I actually think is great is that when I was saying that, the give back, not just on masks and whatnot, but you're giving back a lot of the knowledge that you've had in this new program, the turnaround plan. And that podcast, as you told me before we started recording, was the fastest way to get your message out. Can you share a little bit about what you're offering on the platform so that listeners can get an understanding? We'll put all the links there when we get to the show notes part of the show. But I think our listeners would love to hear what they can get on that program.
Yeah, absolutely. So the podcast, it's a mixture of several things. One, there's a mix of, the story behind a turnaround, which encompasses, the emotional roller coaster, which includes how to get over, because when there's layoffs, your business, which is really your baby, is getting hit. It's an emotional roller coaster. So we definitely touch on that. And I share that through my own personal experiences. But then there's also very actionable to-do type items in there. Some of them come from my solo podcast, where I'll just speak on a certain topic that I think will help my listeners. And other episodes are where I'm interviewing other business owners. Some of them are suffering. Some of them are thriving in this market, and some have already completed, at least a first version of their turnaround and pivot so that they can, weather the storm coming up. And so it's really just real life, strategies that are coming both from me as well as other entrepreneurs that I'm able to interview.
Let me ask this question from your experience and your personal thought pieces that you share. What's one key tip that you'd love to share with our audience here on Thrive Loud that is a great lesson right now in the turnaround plan for those that are facing the struggling business right now and what they should be doing? Something that you either went through or that you learned during your turnaround.
Yeah. There's so many of them, but really, probably the biggest one that really hit me when I was doing my turnaround and what I've been sharing is there's a difference between your cash flow situation and your P&L, a profit and loss statement. And a good friend of mine during my downturn, and he's actually a CFO, he told me, he said, Byron, stop managing your business on the P&L and start managing it on weekly cash flow forecast. And that was so powerful for me because I called it my sleeping pill. What I mean by that is, as I was going through the downturn and turnaround, I didn't think I'd make it out most of the time. So I was like thinking, okay, I might go out of business, but I'm not going to go out of business in the next 3 weeks. And I can see that on my cash flow forecast. And so having that power of, not knowing what's after 3 weeks gets a little gray, but for next 3 weeks, I know we'll be in business. And that helped me sleep at night. And it really helped me maintain my composure as I was making my way through this.
It's so true. I think a lot of times you can look at certain revenues, but the unforeseen circumstances, like what the world is going through now, put a crimp on a lot of things. I knew companies that had incredible first quarters, January and February, but a lot of payments weren't to be brought in until March or April. And that delay in everything that's happened currently in between has caused a lot of problems in the business because that cash wasn't coming in. Yeah. So yeah, I totally get the importance of managing those two. Let me ask this question in a way that I don't normally ask it. What was the thing during the 70% drop that caused you the most sleep loss?
Definitely letting people go.
Okay.
It's just gut-wrenching. And like I said, I think I have a hard time with anyone, but letting anyone go, but certainly the people that have been with me the longest, people that really helped start this company. And so it was just so hard. And one time I was kind of just crying on one of my friend's shoulders. I was just like, this is awful. This is awful. And one thing he said to me really stuck with me. He goes, it should be awful. If this didn't bother you, then there would be a bigger problem. And I was like, wow. Yeah. Okay. So I stopped trying to wish for this turmoil or this pain to go away, because honestly, if it did go away, I'd probably be a SOB. I wouldn't be a nice guy. And so sometimes you have to kind of lean into that and just know, yeah, it sucks, but you'll get through it. And it's okay that it hurts, because if it didn't hurt, it'd almost be worse.
Byron, now I'm going to flip this around. You mentioned there was incredible growing pains during that 500%, 5 times explosion when COVID-19 hit for your business. How overworked or overstressed was your 5 people that you had working for the company at that point in time?
Very. But a couple of things. One, it went from 5 to 9. So now we have 9 people. Yep. But my staff did great. My team did great with it. And I think I did great with it too, because yeah, it's difficult, long hours, stressful, things are breaking, all these things. But I'm glad to be on this side of the fence. Yeah. In other words, my team had, most of their friends are getting laid off. Most of them have financial issues. And here we are, keeping everyone employed and even paying bonuses. So while it is very difficult, it's difficult for everyone right now in this world, right? And so if you're going to choose a difficult situation, I think we're on the right side of that. And so I think, talking to my staff about that really helped them kind of see like, yeah, it's crazy, it's hard, but you know what? It's better than the alternative.
Byron, this question is a fun one here. I think we all can't wait until we go back to some form of normal, understanding that the world, until there's a vaccine, is not necessarily going to be normal. It'll all be different. And I imagine there are parts of your business now that will never change because of the value that you did in moving it virtually. Do you foresee a certain aspect of your business, though, changing as we do go back more to normal?
Well, with my particular business, I do see the survival market being on an elevated, sales, on the revenue side for at least 2 to 3 years, probably longer. But I think for the next 2 to 3 years, we'll be, on this higher level and continue down that path. People forget, and the recession. It's funny how a recession comes and goes, and when the next one comes, people forget all those lessons that they learned. Well, I think this is going to be a lot harder to forget over the next 2 or 3 years, but certainly it's going to be front and center for the, foreseeable future. So I think the business will stay, at this elevated level for many years.
Yeah, And I'm imagining, I think your timeline might even be faster than that, because I think that's the one thing that is happening is these turnaround times of things are happening so quickly. We're only in week 7, technically, of social isolation at the time we're recording this in late April. And the reality is that we could be on a very good path towards the end of the summer and the fall, or, in this quasi path for quite some time. And it'll feel like a long time ago just to look back to this time that we're recording right now. I love doing this with the guests on the show, Byron. Maybe you could help me out. You're an entrepreneur. You've got unique something about you that might even have foresight, even though you don't say you're a guru. We're going to say you're one heck of a thriving individual. But on certain days, like those days when you had to deal with having to lay off the people that you did, or stress about certain things in the market and your cash flow, on those days we're not kicking on all cylinders, what practice do you preach, or what individual do you seek out to get yourself back on the thriving track?
For me, it's a lot about self-care, and it's all too easy to kind of ignore it when things are chaotic. But for me personally, self-care is meditation. Once or twice a day, it's working out, so they get that heartbeat roaring, and then lastly is talking. And it sounds so obvious, but talking to other entrepreneurs about the situation at hand. Because, the whole thing about turning around the business is you got to have a turnaround plan. You have to execute it, and don't think you're just going to be able to really just, digest this in your own head. You need to get it out, and your own team and your own employees, while they're helpful, you need to take it to a different level, an ownership type level. So talking with other entrepreneurs about your situation, that's what saved my butt over the last couple of years. I talked to so many people, and not only did I get really good ideas and great feedback, and people telling me great idea, or telling me, Byron, that's a bad idea, or don't do that, or whatever it is. But it was also just the fact that I got to talk and got to get it out of my head. And that, exchange back and forth with two people, it's so helpful in these trying times.
Byron, let's do the admin part of the show. If you could share with the listeners all the places people can find you, websites for Survival Frog, for their podcast, social media. We will put it all in the show notes. However, it always gets more engagement when they hear it from you.
Okay. Yeah. Well, the main company, which, I've had for 11 years, is survivalfrog.com. So if looking for any camping gear, survival gear, it's some cool stuff there. As far as their turnaround and some of the things I'm doing on that side, we've got, I've got the podcast, which is the turnaround. And then I do have a website where I've got different ideas on there too. And that's called theturnaroundplan.com. Top 10 checklists, things like that. Things that I'm using when I'm talking with my friends right now about their struggling businesses. I'm putting that up on that website.
Nice.
As far as social, I'd say LinkedIn is probably the best. Okay. Byron Walker.
Perfect. See how easy that was? Don't we love when we do the admin part of the show at this point? Because now we get to go down Fun Street, Byron.
All right.
So Byron, Fun Street, you know one of these questions, but the other ones you don't. So can you share with the listeners your all-time favorite movie?
Well, I don't know if I have an all-time, but I will say this. I just got done watching all of the Star Wars movies with the kids. And we went in chronological order. And so it was really weird because they're made in different times. But that
you
was
went,
a lot
wait,
of
so
fun.
you went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Yeah.
Okay. So, you're not going to be able to skip this, but of the 9 Star Wars movies, which is your favorite?
I don't know.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. The whole experience is what I got out of it. It was so much fun. But I think, towards the end, they definitely, the technology is better. And I think we laughed our way through some of the older versions. That's for sure.
Yeah. I think I would still have to see it 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9. That would just be me, but just because that's the way that I guess I saw it. It's the way my brain operates, I guess. But
yeah.
Alternative timeline. I guess Quentin Tarantino might have something on me. Who knows? All right. So Byron, is there, when you're moving or working out or doing something, a certain jam or song that you like to play that gets you motivated and moving?
Well, for me, when I'm working, I often, it doesn't really matter the song as much as it's very repetitive. And my kids give me grief about it because usually there's no words. And it's just almost meditation type music, but just that repetitive nature really helps me when I'm working.
Okay. The last part is going to be an interesting one. So let's just say, and hopefully for the sake of the country, in the world, for that matter, a vaccine or a treatment comes pretty soon for COVID-19. And let's say we snapped our fingers and it happened right now. What do you think is the first thing that you would go back to go in that sense of normalcy? I guess the thing maybe you're missing most that you've been craving that you can't go to now, but you'd love to go if everything was fixed.
Well, I would think it would just be going to a restaurant, because that's the one thing I think we'll have a difficult time coming back to, or at least a normal restaurant. So for me, it's that, I missed out on half my ski year, so that was tough. But, I think just that normalcy of going out, having a date night, and just going to a restaurant and not, it's funny. Now I watch, I'll watch a TV show or something, and I'll see it like people shaking hands and hugging. And I'm like, oh my God, I missed that.
Yeah, it's so true.
And will that come back anytime soon?
I think it will. I'm optimistic. I've got a feeling.
So, yeah.
Byron Walker, the turnaround plan and survival frog. This has been great. We'll make sure to put all the links so everyone can connect with you, hear your podcast. We also know you're connected through the Turnkey family here. So welcome aboard. And it was great to have you on Thrive Loud.
Thanks so much for having me.
And to all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us. And until next time, keep thriving onward and upward. And remember, be brief, be bright, be gone.
You've been listening to Thrive Loud with your host, Lou Diamond. Check us out on the web at thriveloud.com and follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook at Thrive Loud. And check us out on the Good Pods app at Thrive Loud, where you can follow, listen, and connect directly to Lou and all of the Thrive Loud episodes. Thanks for listening.